They kicked her out of briefing. Then the Pentagon called and cleared the room for her alone. Get her out. This room is for people who actually matter. Gerald Whitmore didn't even look up when he said it. He just flicked 2 fingers toward the door, the way a man dismisses a waiter, while Naomi Cole stood at the end of the conference table holding a report nobody had asked her to bring. Beside him, Camille Reyes smirked into her coffee and murmured, loud enough to carry, "The documentation temp thinks she belongs in the war room." The laughter came fast and cruel. 14 engineers, 3 program managers, and a colonel's aide, all of them in ArcLight Defense Systems' most secure briefing room. And every one of them turned to watch the woman in the 8-year-old blazer get walked to the door. Whitmore finally glanced up, just to enjoy it. "Sweetheart," he said, "we're 40 hours from a Pentagon acceptance deadline. Leave the grown-up work to the grown-ups. Go update a spreadsheet." Naomi's jaw tightened. She didn't argue. She set the report down at the empty chair nearest the door, straightened her spine, and walked out with her chin level, past the security officer who wouldn't meet her eyes. What Gerald Whitmore didn't know was that the documentation temp he'd just humiliated had personally designed the classified system his entire team had been failing to fix for 9 straight days. What Camille didn't know was that within the hour, a phone would ring on the Pentagon side of a secure line, and the name they'd ask for, the only name that could save the $90 million contract Whitmore was about to lose, was Naomi's. And what none of them knew was that by Monday, Whitmore would be cleaning out his corner office. Camille would be reassigned to a windowless annex in Ohio. And the woman they'd just escorted out of the room would be the one they'd all be waiting on. But for now, Naomi just found a bench in the empty hallway, sat down, and texted her 9-year-old daughter a heart emoji. 10 hours earlier, Naomi Cole had woken up at 4:50 a.m. with $63 in her checking account and absolutely no idea that her old life was about to come knocking. She lay still for a moment in the dark, listening. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the small, even breathing coming from the next room. Riley, 9 years old, asleep with one foot hanging off the mattress like always, her stuffed narwhal crushed under her arm. Naomi got up before the alarm could wake her. She always did. The kitchen light flickered twice before it caught. She measured the coffee the way she measured everything now, carefully, 1 scoop, because the good coffee had to last until Friday. She made Riley's lunch first. Peanut butter, the crusts cut off because Riley still liked them cut off, and Naomi wasn't ready for her to stop. She tucked a note into the bag. "You've got this, kiddo, Mom." The same 3 words, most mornings. Riley kept them all in a shoebox under her bed. Naomi had found it once and had to leave the room so her daughter wouldn't see her cry. By the door sat Riley's sneakers, the left one splitting at the toe. Naomi had run a line of clear glue along the seam twice this month. New ones were $40. $40 was 2 weeks of the grocery budget she'd already stretched past breaking. The shoes would have to hold a little longer. She caught her own reflection in the hallway mirror and didn't linger on it. 3 years ago, she'd worn a badge that opened doors most people didn't know existed. 3 years ago, her husband, Marcus, had been alive. A Navy test pilot with a laugh you could hear across a hangar. Then a training flight went wrong over the Pacific, and the laugh was gone, and Naomi had done the only thing that made sense. She'd walked away from the career that ate 80 hours a week and taken the quiet, invisible job that let her be home when Riley got off the bus. Nobody at ArcLight knew who she'd been. She'd made sure of that. She'd taken the contract role under her maiden name, listed only the last 2 of her jobs, and let them file her under consultant documentation. It was easier. When you tell defense people what you used to build, they either want to use you up or push you out. Naomi just wanted to raise her daughter in peace. She woke Riley at 6. "5 more minutes," Riley mumbled, the way she did every single day. "You said that 5 minutes ago." "I want a refund on those minutes." Naomi laughed, kissed her hair, and pulled the blanket back. On the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a rocket, was a drawing Riley had made in art class. 2 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sun. Me and Mom. Naomi looked at it every morning. It was the whole reason she got up at 4:50. She dropped Riley at the bus stop, watched until the doors closed, and drove her 14-year-old sedan to the ArcLight campus with the check engine light glowing like a small orange accusation on the dash. She had no idea that the day would end with the entire program on its knees. She just knew the coffee was already cold. At ArcLight, the mood was a wire pulled to snapping. Project Sentinel, the classified command and coordination network the company had staked its future on, had failed its integration test 9 days running. Every attempt to bring the system online died at the same invisible wall. An authentication handshake buried deep in the architecture that refused to complete, no matter how many senior engineers threw themselves at it. The Pentagon acceptance review was in 40 hours. Miss it, and ArcLight lost the contract, the follow-on work, and roughly 1/5 of its workforce. Gerald Whitmore, the program director, had spent those 9 days doing what men like Whitmore do under pressure, blaming everyone beneath him and no one above. He had a corner office, a golf handicap he mentioned constantly, and a way of saying "with respect" right before he said something with none. Naomi had spent those 9 days reading the failure logs at her little desk near the printers, because that was the job. She documented everyone else's work. And on the 3rd day, she'd seen it. The handshake wasn't broken. It was doing exactly what it had been designed to do, refusing to complete unless a specific legacy authority key, a failsafe written into the original protocol years earlier, was present and confirmed. The team was trying to code around a lock. What they needed was the person who'd forged the key. She knew, because she was the person who'd forged it. She'd tried to say so twice. The first time, a senior engineer named Dev had actually listened for 30 seconds before Whitmore waved him off. The second time was this morning, when she'd walked into the briefing with a 2-page memo laying it out plainly, and Whitmore had thrown her out of the room to a chorus of laughter. So she sat on the hallway bench, and she waited. Because she'd worked around men like Whitmore her whole career, and she knew something they never did. Reality doesn't care who's allowed in the room. Inside, the briefing ground on. Whitmore stood at the head of the table, jacket off, sleeves rolled, performing competence. "We rewrite the handshake from scratch," he announced. "Clean build. We own this by tonight." Dev, the senior engineer, cleared his throat. "Sir, we've tried 3 clean builds. It fails at the same authority check every time. The consultant's memo, actually." "The consultant," Whitmore said, "arranges my meeting minutes. Are we taking architecture advice from the woman who orders the sandwiches now?" Camille Reyes laughed on cue. "Maybe she can document the layoffs," she said, and a few people chuckled, and Dev looked down at his laptop and said nothing. And the memo Naomi had left sat on the table exactly where she'd set it, unopened. That memo was going to matter more than anyone in that room could imagine. But it would take a phone call to make them see it. At 2:15 p.m., that phone call came. It didn't come to Whitmore. It came in on the secure line that terminated in ArcLight's Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, the SCIF, the vault within the vault that only a handful of badged people could enter. The duty officer took it, went pale, and walked it up the chain so fast he nearly ran. The message was short. The Pentagon Program Office had escalated Sentinel to the office of the general responsible for the entire acquisition. And that office had one question. The colonel's aide burst into the briefing without knocking. "Mr. Whitmore, secure line. It's the program executive office. They want a status call in 10 minutes, and they're asking for someone by name." Whitmore straightened his tie, already rehearsing his voice. "Of course. Put it in here. I'll walk the general through our recovery plan." "Sir." The aide swallowed. "They're not asking for you." The room went quiet in a way it hadn't been all day. "They're asking for the architect of record, the original protocol authority." The aide looked at his notepad as if he didn't believe it either. "The name on the classified design filing is N. Cole. They said the failsafe can only be released by the original architect, and that person's clearance is still active in their system. Higher than yours, higher than anyone's in this building." Camille's smirk was gone. Whitmore's face had done something complicated. "There's no Cole on this program," he said. "The only Cole here is—" He stopped. Somewhere in the back of the room, Dev made a small sound, like a man watching a car crash in slow motion. He'd read the memo. He'd seen the signature at the bottom, N. Cole. He'd assumed it was a coincidence. "Get her back in here," Whitmore said. His voice had lost its performance entirely. "Now." They found Naomi on the hallway bench. The security officer who'd walked her out 3 hours earlier stood in front of her, unable to look her in the eye. "Ms. Cole, they're asking for you. On the secure line." Naomi looked up. She'd known this call would come the moment she read the failure logs on day 3. She'd just wondered whether they'd ask nicely. "Which office?" she said quietly. The aide read the designation off his pad. Naomi closed her eyes for half a second. A name she hadn't heard in 3 years. An office she'd briefed a dozen times in another life. "Give me 2 minutes," she said, "and clear everyone who isn't read into the original program." Whitmore, hovering in the doorway, tried to reassert himself. "Now let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'll be on the call to provide leadership and— Mr. Whitmore." Naomi stood. She was a full head shorter than him, and it didn't matter at all. "You are not read into the original protocol. You never were. In about 90 seconds, a general is going to be on that line asking me to release a national security failsafe, and I am not going to do it in a room full of people who aren't cleared to hear it. That includes you." For one long moment, nobody breathed. Then the SCIF door opened, and a man in the hallway, a Defense Department liaison named Ethan Ross, who'd been quietly assigned to the ArcLight site and who had, notably, been the only person all week to bring Naomi a coffee and call her Ms. Cole, stepped forward with his badge out. "She's right," Ethan said. "Program office confirmed her authority 2 minutes ago. I need everyone not on the original read-in list to clear the SCIF. Now, please." And they did. One by one, the engineers who'd laughed, the managers who'd looked away, the security officer, Camille with her pale face and her silent tablet. All of them filed out of the vault they'd thrown Naomi out of that morning. Whitmore went last, slowly, like a man being marched off a stage mid-speech. They cleared the room for her alone. Naomi sat down at the secure terminal. Ethan lowered the door. On the screen, a video window opened, and a 3-star general, silver-haired, tired, unmistakably relieved, leaned toward the camera. "Naomi Cole," the general said, and something in the way he said it made the hair on the back of Ethan's neck stand up. "It has been a long 3 years. I'm sorry it took a crisis to find you. We need the Sentinel failsafe released, and you're the only living person with the authority to do it. Will you walk us through it?" Naomi looked at the terminal, at the architecture she'd built in another life, before the crash, before the shoebox of notes, before $63 in a checking account. Her hands were perfectly steady. "Give me 20 minutes, General," she said, "and I'll bring your system home." She did it in 17. When the SCIF door finally opened again, the entire third floor of ArcLight had gone silent. Word travels fast in a building that runs on secrets. By the time Naomi walked out, the same 8-year-old blazer, the same level chin, the whole floor knew that the woman Gerald Whitmore had thrown out of the briefing at 9 that morning had just single-handedly saved the contract that paid all their salaries. Nobody laughed this time. Dev was the first to move. He crossed the floor, stopped in front of her, and said quietly, "I read your memo. I should have said something. I'm sorry." Naomi held his gaze a beat, then nodded once. It was more than she'd gotten from anyone else all week, and she let it count. Camille Reyes was standing near the printers, her tablet clutched to her chest, saying nothing, because there was nothing left to say. And Gerald Whitmore was in his corner office with the door closed, on the phone, his voice climbing and cracking through the glass, trying to explain to someone above him how the architect of record had been sitting 40 feet from his office for 2 months while he called her the sandwich lady. Ethan Ross fell into step beside Naomi as she walked toward the exit. He didn't crowd her, he just walked. Finally, he said, "You could have told them who you were the first day. Would have saved yourself a lot of grief." "I know. Why didn't you?" Naomi thought about it. About Riley's split sneaker. About the 80-hour weeks she'd walked away from. About what it cost the last time people knew exactly how useful she could be. "Because I wanted to leave at 5:15 every day and pick my daughter up off the bus," she said. "The second they know what you can do, they take everything. I've already given this place enough. I've got 1 kid and 1 life, and neither of them are up for sale." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then carefully, "For what it's worth, I never thought you were the sandwich lady." He hesitated. "My daughter Poppy split her shoe last month, too. Super glue on the toe. Bought us 3 weeks." He said it like a confession, one single parent to another, the shorthand of people who count in weeks instead of dollars. Naomi looked at him, really looked for the first time. And something small and long frozen shifted a 1/4 inch in her chest. "Clear glue," she said. "Super glue turns the whole toe yellow." Ethan laughed, surprised, noted. But the consequences of that morning were only beginning, because when a general clears the room for someone, and a program director gets caught calling that someone the help, the reckoning that follows doesn't stay quiet for long. By Friday, Gerald Whitmore no longer had a corner office. The formal reason on the memo was restructuring of program leadership effective immediately. The real reason ran through the building like current. The general's office had asked, pointedly, why the architect of record had been buried in a documentation roll and then physically removed from a briefing she was legally required to lead. ArcLight's executives, staring down a company-defining contract that had nearly died on Whitmore's watch, did the math in about 4 hours. Whitmore was walked out the same door he'd had Naomi walked out of, carrying a single cardboard box, past the same security officer, who this time held the door open and said nothing. He tried, at the elevator, to catch Naomi's eye, to say something, an apology, an excuse. If I'd known. Naomi was at her desk with her back to him, and she didn't turn around. Some doors, once you slam them on someone, don't open again just because you got caught. Dev told her about it afterward. half expecting her to smile. She didn't. She just nodded, slow, and said, "I hope he learns from it." She meant it. There was no triumph in her voice, and no gloating in her face, only the quiet tiredness of someone who'd watched a man engineer his own ending and taken no pleasure in the demolition. Camille Reyes lasted another 11 days. She wasn't fired. She was reassigned, transferred to a records processing office in a satellite facility in Ohio. A lateral move on paper that everyone understood was a burial. Her requests to stay on the flagship program went unanswered. The colleagues who'd laughed at her jokes suddenly had meetings when she walked by. She learned the hard way that cruelty is loud when you're winning and very, very quiet when you're not. Naomi didn't celebrate any of it. She went home. 3 months later, she woke at 6:40 instead of 4:50, and the difference felt like a small, ordinary miracle. The apartment was the same size, but there was new coffee in the cabinet now, the good kind, and enough of it that she didn't count the scoops anymore. She'd taken a new role on her own terms. A proper architecture position, negotiated in writing to end at 4:30, home by 5, no exceptions. With a salary that had made the recruiter's voice go carefully neutral when she'd named her number, and then agreed to it inside a day. By the door sat a brand new pair of sneakers. Purple, with a silver stripe down the side, exactly the ones Riley had circled in a catalog, and then said, "But they're too much, Mom. The glue is fine." They hadn't been too much. Not anymore. Naomi packed a lunch and cut the crusts off, because Riley still liked them cut off, and tucked in the note. "You've got this, kiddo. Mom." The shoebox under the bed was getting full. "Poppy's dad is picking us up after school," Riley announced through a mouthful of cereal. "For the Science Museum. Can I get the dinosaur thing in the gift shop?" "We'll see." That means yes. That means we'll see. It meant yes, and they both knew it. Ethan Ross had turned out to be exactly what he seemed, and nothing more. A widower raising an 8-year-old named Poppy. A man who counted in weeks and cut crusts off sandwiches and had never once, not for a second, been impressed by a badge. The 4 of them had drifted into orbit slowly. A museum here, a pizza night there. 2 girls who'd become inseparable, and 2 parents who'd been burned badly enough that neither of them rushed a thing. Careful, intentional, real. That evening, Ethan's small kitchen was warm and loud and smelled like garlic. Poppy and Riley sat on the floor, building something enormous and structurally questionable out of blocks. Ethan stirred a pot he was pretending to have under control. Naomi leaned against the counter with a glass of wine and let herself, for a moment, simply exist inside a room where nobody wanted anything from her but her company. "They asked you back, you know," Ethan said, not looking up from the pot. "ArcLight, new leadership. They want you to consult on the next program. Big money." "I know. They called Tuesday." "And?" Naomi watched her daughter laugh at something Poppy had said. "I told them I'm home by 5 now," she said, "and that the price of me is that I stay home by 5. They can take it or leave it." Ethan smiled at the pot. "And?" "They took it." From the floor, Riley looked up. "Mom, tell Poppy about the time the whole army called you and they had to make everyone leave the room. It wasn't the whole army, Bug, but they cleared the room for you, alone." Riley said it the way you describe a superpower, eyes wide, entirely certain her mother was the most important person alive. Poppy stared at Naomi with new respect. Ethan turned around, wooden spoon in hand, and looked at her with something warmer than respect and quieter than a promise. Naomi felt her throat tighten. not from the memory of the SCIF or the general or the man carrying his box to the elevator. From this. From a warm kitchen and 2 girls on the floor and a good man at the stove and a daughter who thought the best thing about her mother was that people had once needed her, and never knowing that the best thing her mother ever did was walk away when they did. "Yeah," she said softly. They cleared the room. She caught Ethan's eye. He raised his spoon an inch, a tiny private toast. She raised her glass to match it. Outside, the light was going gold and easy. Inside, the block's tower finally, gloriously collapsed, and both girls shrieked with laughter, and Riley yelled, "Again!" And someone's timer went off, and the whole small room moved at once like a thing that had always known how to be a family. Naomi didn't need a room cleared for her anymore. She had exactly the one she wanted, and everyone in it was already home.